Histories of American-Cuban relations often focus on post-Castro events such as the Bay of Pigs and the Cold War. However, how did Fidel Castro rise to the position he was in? And how was the US involved in Cuba before then? This Cleovis time map will demonstrate US-Cuban relations beginning from the end of the Spanish War to the eventual rise of Fidel Castro. So, starting off, the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1898, ending the 4-month battle between the US and Spain. As a result, the US gained the territories of Puerto Rico and Guam and further promised the freedom of the Cuban people due to their role in also revolting against Spain. However, this freedom involved the beginning period of the US military administration in Cuba. During this administration, the Platt Amendment was signed, providing the US with the means to intervene in Cuba if its democracy was being threatened. This amendment established a strong US presence in Cuba through naval bases, coaling, and treaty-making restrictions. Following the Platt Amendment, Tomás Estrada Palma was the first elected president of the Cuban Republic. Although Cuba did very well under his presidency, he largely supported US favoring policies such as the Platt Amendment and the 1903 Cuban-American Treaty. As a result, following his re-election, the Cuban Liberal Party revolted, causing Tomás Estrada Palma to step down. With this, the US put the Platt Amendment to work and intervened, leading to a provisional government led by William Howard Taft. After Taft, José Miguel Gómez was elected, another president that maintained strong US relations. However, under his presidency, racism towards Afro-Latinos and political corruption became two dangerous issues. Following Gómez's policy banning political gatherings based on race, the PIC held a peaceful demonstration, which the government and papers negatively and purposefully portrayed as a race war waged by Afro-Latinos against Cuban whites. Consequently, President José Miguel Gómez deployed the Cuban army to attack PIC members, leading to the death of over 2,000 Cubans. This was a move of both racial and political suppression. The election of Mario Garcia Menocal provided many necessary reforms in economy, agriculture, and health. Nonetheless, Menocal additionally rooted for the strengthening of US relations and policy. Further, due to the collapse of sugarcane prices, Cubans were selling larger shares of factories to US companies, increasing their presence in the Cuban Republic. José Miguel Gómez, a former president of Cuba, led an insurrection after deeming Menocal's re-election as fraudulent. Due to the fact that sugarcane was selling at a high price in World War I, US investors and government were interested in suppressing the liberal vote, causing a third US intervention in Cuba. Later, Gerardo Machado, a tyrannical ruler, was elected. Although political corruption has been a problem in Cuba before, Machado began a clear and decisive era of dictator-like ruling. He used his secret police to silence political opposition, like students and critics, additionally undemocratically extending his presidency past its due date. Further, the Machado regime was not well liked by the Franklin D. Roosevelt administration. As a result of these extensions, Batista spearheaded a coup. Taking only an hour and 17 minutes, Batista and other sergeants, students, and workers took every single strategic point of Havana, causing an eventual surrender. After Machado's exile, Batista practically implemented various puppet governments until his eventual election. Following the Cuban crisis, or the overthrow of Machado, the US began to rethink how it approached foreign affairs in Latin America. Specifically, FDR signed the Good Neighbor policy, limiting US intervention in countries such as Cuba, while still protecting business interests and their industries and tourism. Batista was elected president of Cuba in 1940 under the Democratic Socialist Coalition. Batista fostered many public programs, created a progressive constitution, and served his 4-year presidency very effectively. However, after making his return to politics in 1952, he understood that he was not going to win re-election. As a result, he staged a coup. His new presidency highlighted a ruling style similar to Machado's. His secret police tortured and murdered citizens, and he ruled under a tyrannical iron fist. Further, Batista heavily advocated for US-based tourism by promoting casinos and Cuban beaches. Against Batista's government, Fidel Castro and around 150 young people attacked the Santiago de Cuba army barracks. Ultimately unsuccessful, Fidel and his brother were exiled to Mexico. During their time in Mexico, the brothers met the infamous Argentine revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara. Eager to help the brothers with the revolution in Cuba, Che also came with Castro and 81 others on their trek back to Cuba on a small yacht called the Granma. Spotted by the Cuban military before landing, almost all of Castro's forces were killed, being further pushed up into the Cuban mountains. The decisive battle in Castro's revolution was the Battle of Santa Clara. On December 27th through January 1st, Cuban rebels, under the directive of Che, took over the city of Santa Clara. Che chose Santa Clara due to its railway importance, and knew that if they captured it, Batista would have to flee. Following the rebels' victory, Batista then fled the country to the Dominican Republic, and finally to Portugal. Finally, Castro is ultimately elected, ending with the quote, "As the US could interfere here in Cuba, when there was no good government, Cubans could not do anything because they were afraid the US would interfere again, and they would lose freedom. So, the people of Cuba got accustomed to bad government and accustomed to other bad things, like waiting for the US to solve the difficulties."